Hi folks, this is Cliff Macklin back with you. I wanted to actually continue my discussion from my last video where I was talking about what I believe is the responsibility of business leaders such as myself and hopefully you to actually take action to save our culture. Now, what do I mean by saving our culture? I think we're in crisis because the cultural values that made the United States truly a great nation, that is individualism, that is the pursuit of knowledge in a consistent, rational way, but also in a way that would encourage people to build businesses around what they were thinking about and what they were discovering, and in an atmosphere where the law would protect their property, both their physical property and their intellectual property. Now, I think that part of the solution to our problem is we have to pass on our cultural capital as American business people, our cultural capital as educated, assertive, inventive people. We're losing our edge in those areas in the world. I think that part of the reason this has happened is because middle-class people, people who have businesses and who really are the leaders in our country, increasingly are becoming an endangered species. Now, part of the reason they're becoming an endangered species, and I want you to think about it, and I hope that you'll understand and agree with me on this. I think you probably will. First of all, there's a biological part of it, and I won't belabor too much. We're not having enough kids. Now, why is it important? It's not just about the gene pool. It's that the ideas and the values that we have in terms of the dissemination through the population, a smaller and smaller group of people actually hold those values. Again, values of individualism, the values of having a civil society, the values of thinking logically and rationally and not ideologically and being driven by religious ideologies or political ideologies that filter the facts. The greatness of our nation is dependent on us making good decisions individually and collectively based on facts. We're losing that, okay? We're losing that. Also, the idea that we will take responsibility for ourselves, that we will work hard, that we will delay gratification in the pursuit of our intellectual and our economic goals. This is very, very important, and we're losing that. We're absolutely losing that. I know that part of what I'm saying is politically incorrect. Some people will say this smacks of cultural elitism. It is a cultural elitism. You look at history, those nations that are dominant have dominant cultures. And they have dominant cultures because they have values. The way that they think, the way that their thinking directs their actions, allow them to be the most efficient in terms of organizing, using natural resources, using personal resources, and then using those resources to survive well and compete in a world that is competitive. That's a reality. We live, and we've always existed in a survival of the fittest environment. It's not politically correct to say, but it is the truth. And when you think about it and you brush aside issues of, whether you're liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican or libertarian or whatever label you may want to put on yourself, and you look at the history of humanity, those who are the smartest, the brightest, the hardest working, the most organized, they rule. They rule. It's not about black or white. It's not about whether you're Asian or European. Every group at one time or another, every nationality, every racial group at one time or another has produced an element, a social element that was dominant. And then they tend over time, out of success, become complacent. Well, we've become complacent. Now, I want to tell you about an experience that I had when I was 18 years old. And I experienced what I want you to do. And I'll tell you right now, what I want you to do is I want you to go out and I want you to find young people with whom you resonate, who are going to listen to you. And sometimes listen to you more than your children will listen to you. And I want you to teach them what you know about being the best, about not being mediocre. When I was 18 years old, I took a plane ride back to Washington, D.C. I was going to a youth conference. Now, sitting next to me on that plane was what I would call a middle middle-aged white guy. Now, I was 18 years old, and so at 18, essentially anybody over the age of 30 is going to be middle-aged. Now, this was June 17th, 1962. I was drawing F-86 fighter planes. This middle-aged white guy, he stops doing his work. He was dressed in a white shirt, tie. He stopped doing his work and he said, "You like to draw planes?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Are you interested in being a pilot?" And I said, "Well, right now I think I'd like to be an aeronautical engineer." And I said it in a way that had some doubt in my voice. And he said, "You seem uncertain about what you're saying." And I said, "Well, the truth is, my parents are not encouraging me because they think that there are no colored aeronautical engineers." And he starts laughing, and he says, "Well, I know your parents love you, but they don't know what they're talking about." So this got my attention. He said, "One of my closest friends is an aeronautical engineer." And I said, "Well, who is that?" And he says, "Well, his name is Chappie Whiteman." Well, I knew the name Chappie Whiteman. He was a Tuskegee Airman, and he was a leader of one of the most successful squadrons fighter squadrons during the Korean War. And so I'm really beginning to wonder, who is this middle-aged white guy, telling me about Chappie Whiteman? And so I said, "Excuse me, sir, but what is your name?" And he says, "My name is John." And I said, "Well, forgive me again. My folks come from the South. I was raised, I never talked to my elders and called them by their first name." He says, "Well, my last name is Glenn." And then I look at this guy and I said,